The sun is up, the day is wide open, and life still has so much to give. Every laugh, every step, every shared moment says the story is still unfolding beautifully. You are not finished yet. Your story continues.
Most people think life follows a straight line. Education, career, retirement. But for many, that line changes. Sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and sometimes by a moment they never expected. This is Not Finished Yet, a podcast about people who started again and discovered their most interesting chapter was still ahead. Each episode shares real stories of reinvention, the risks, the decisions, and what it actually takes to build something new later in life. Because the truth is, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Can I just add that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of any organisations, employers, or partners connected to them. Before we start, a quick note. A large number of people who listen to the podcast haven't yet subscribed. If you find these conversations valuable, hit subscribe or follow on your platform. It makes a huge difference and helps us keep sharing these stories. Now, let's get into this week's story. Thanks for coming on. So I'll get straight into it. Some people build one business in a lifetime. Today's guest has built more than 20 across 5 different countries. But Roy's story is about much more than business success. It's about reinvention, resilience, and what happens when life strips everything away and you have to build again from the ground up. Roy is a serial entrepreneur, podcast host, podcast coach, which we'll get into. That'd be great. Give me a few tips. And a speaker with an extraordinary journey. He started work at just 9 years old, went from being extremely shy to becoming an award-winning public speaker, and has launched 6 podcasts, with 4 of them reaching the top 0.5% globally. He's also co-founder of BrainGym.fitness and VA.world, helping people improve mental performance and scale their business with the right support. But what makes Roy's story especially powerful is the contrast. His experience major highs, financial success and international business growth, but also devastating lows, including losing everything and facing a personal liability of over $5 million. For all of that, he's continued to learn, adapt, speak out and help others. This conversation about entrepreneurship, failure, rebuilding, podcasting, purpose, calmness, and what really it takes to keep going when life tests you. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
So let's get straight in. You started working at just 9 years old, which is something that stands out straight away. Was there something in you, even that you knew you wanted to create your own path, or what was in you at that time that you felt at 9 years old that you wanted to go down this path?
Sure. We were living in a council estate, and things were tight. I knew my father was he was a chief projectionist, and he also did weddings, and I know that he was living week to week. And I'm not sure, was it before that, or there was one part that usually they got an extra week for Christmas. And the guy that owned the cinema, there was 2 of them, they were called Ward Anderson. Typical, big corporation, they bought out all the cinemas around Ireland. And if you were a small boy, they'd say, you can't get that picture, so they wouldn't give it to him. So he was working for a guy like that. And one year he didn't give him a bonus. And I remember that they were under pressure to buy presents and have the Christmas dinner and everything. And it was just kind of, I don't know when that was or had a connection, but when you asked me that, I was saying, so what I was doing at 9, I was going around washing cars, delivering leaflets. I did gardening for a while, which I didn't like because it was thorns, painful, and you get pennies. So I said no. Then at 11, I started a newspaper round, and I did that up to college. I was doing maybe 100 papers. And what that did is, when people were going away to the beach or going to the pool and stuff like that, I had to be there every day, except for Sunday. And at one stage I was doing Sunday papers, but it kind of around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, where I was delivering for about an hour. And it kind of, I suppose, gave me that I was disciplined to what I was doing. I wasn't trying to say I'm not delivering today or get somebody else to do it. with the money from that, at 14, I bought a lawnmower. So then I was going around cutting grass. I remember at 18, I was into motorbikes, and yeah, I did a lot of kind of mealing and dealing with that as well. You know, I'd buy a bike, spruce it up a bit, sell it a few days later, make a couple $100, and yeah, that was always. Then I studied construction economics and management. Then I worked for a mechanical contractor for 8.5 years, worked my way up to contracts manager, then worked for another mech and elect contractor as a regional manager. And kind of during that, I formed a web development company with a guy and moved to Poland, and yeah, kind of was doing a lot of construction, built 30 apartments, houses, a lot of different things, renovated 200 properties, got wiped out as you mentioned. And then got into podcasting. So that's kind of my journey to date.
So let's stay with the early days first, and we'll go through your complete journey. But washing cars, you said, delivering newspapers, mowing lawns. What did those early experiences teach you about work and independence?
The thing I learned is the more no's you get, the closer to a yes you're going to have. It was like it never knocked me. You could call into 100 houses to ask that they want their grass cut, and you might get none. But then you might hit somebody who'd give you 25 quid, and that was Irish money at the time. And it was just a case of it's part of the thing. And the same with the newspapers. At the start, you were calling into every house, and then you realised some people would buy it now and again, then some people would subscribe to get it daily. And it was just a case of, unless they told me don't come again, I would keep going. And that kind of the same in sales. Like, it gives you the thing to, no doesn't mean no forever. It just means no.
Yeah, and I think you maybe already answered this, but anyway. But do you think that entrepreneurs are born that way, or do you think they're shaped by the circumstances they're in?
I've seen all kind of levels. Some they kind of go, my kind of journey start earlier. Others don't, and they get into like working for a corporation, and then realize, hey, I'm like a slave. They treat me like crap. I need to do it myself. And then they kind of start learning. So everyone has their own kind of, and sometimes think, is it in your DNA? I think you can learn anything, to be honest. If you make it like studying that, okay, how can I do such a thing? Start reading the book, start listening to podcasts, meeting the people that are doing it. And as long as you're paying attention and making notes and doing the things you're told, you're able to do anything.
So your mindset around the journey, was it about, do you think even at an early age, or when was it, do you really, was it about money, or was it about the interest in the business makeup as a young person? Do you think
it was more the business? It was never money was motivating me. It wasn't a case of I have to make so much cutting grass, or I need to be. It was, and I mean, I was looking after myself. I didn't need pocket money from a young age. Since I started doing the newspapers, I didn't need pocket money from my parents. I bought my own clothes. I was looking after my mother. I remember at 16 buying her, a new oven and just different things, buying the first video for the house. And so, but it was never kind of, and even to this day, it's never about the money. It's always about the passion.
Well, what was interesting about reading about you really was, and it's quite relatable really, was your transformation from a shy to a confident communicator. Someone who's at 9 years old knocking on doors, and so when you spoke about being extremely shy, how bad really was it?
I call it's like an ambivert. It's selective shyness, because I can't understand that, because when I was younger, I wouldn't go into the shop. I'd give my friend the money to buy the sweets. I was even asking my mum at one stage, and she said, you'd always take your bicycle or the dog. You kind of felt conscious kind of walk. No, but I could call into 100 houses, and that was okay. Or talking to just friends and stuff. When I was 18, going to the bar, I wouldn't go up to the bar. When it was my round, I'd give my friends the money and they'd go. It was just something I didn't like. I was running multi-million-pound jobs for the mechanical contractor I was working for. And the one part I hated was the meeting. It was like one job I worked on for a good few years was Johnson & Johnson. So the client would be there. You'd have the architect, the builder, load of different trades. My voice would go. And I was like, I was in my mid-40s when I kind of said, I need to overcome this. So it's strange, because even when I was working with the mechanical contractor, my best thing was negotiation. I could ring up 100 people and get prices, and I'd get better prices than the procurement, and they couldn't understand it. They said, how can you do it? So, like, a shy person, it's strange. It's selective shyness. I don't know. It was just kind of... Yeah. Like even going to a restaurant, I couldn't go into... No problem. I couldn't go into a restaurant on my own.
It's interesting because funny enough, my match to you really is that I have always worked outside of business. We do inside, it's a business still. It's called the Insight Routes, and I always saw myself as not an entrepreneur, but more of a manager of managers. I work with entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs they don't really dot all the time the I's and cross all the T's, do they? They're on to the next thing straight away, and but generally what was interesting about you is that most of them are quite outgoing, and what they haven't got is the structure behind them, and you've got more. You seem like you've got you were the opposite of an entrepreneur, but you were obviously an entrepreneur. It's quite interesting. So the story I think we're trying to get across today is that people of all walks and lives, I hate that word entrepreneur because it makes you think like that you've got to be like Bill Gates or someone like that that's just gone out of his way, and but they're all different characters, are they? So you've developed your skills. You mentioned a thing called Toastmasters, so it became a huge part of your journey. Give me some of that experience. What that experience do to you personally, not just professionally, and explain for the listeners what Toastmasters is.
Toastmasters is basically an organisation that helps you to speak. So there's, you can have 10 to maybe 40 people in a group. It's located all over the world. It's very cheap to do. And you've got existing people experience that kind of mentor people, and there's different things. You can host a meeting, you can do a speech, and then a person evaluates your speech. You do table topics, which is they call up people randomly and say, talk about this. You don't know what they're going to ask you, and you try to talk for 2 minutes, because that can happen at a networking event. Somebody can throw a curveball at you, and instead of giving them a bedazzled rabbit look, you're able to talk away. So when I decided, okay, I need to overcome my fear, I had to bring friends with me to hold my hand, of course, to go to the one. And I said, okay, this is great. I need this. And they said, we don't have time. And I was too shy to go back. And the only reason I joined is a new club opened about 2 months later. And I said, okay, this is new. People are going to be new. I'm going. And they said, will you sign up? Yeah. Will you do a speech next week? Yeah. And I kind of went all in. And then I joined the previous one. I formed my own club, International Entrepreneurs, a morning club. And I became a coach of a Finnish club. And I entered all competitions, got into the final of 5 countries. Got loads of time. Even in Polish, I got into next rounds of the Polish ones as well. And I did an open TEDx. I did an open comedy, because in Toastmasters you could do the worst speech of your life and you're going to get a clap. Whereas if you do a comedy, yeah, they'll rip you apart if you do it. So I was always pushing myself. I was kind of learning as well. I was looking at TEDx's and reading books, and I didn't wing it. I recorded all my speeches. And then I started mentoring, and loads of people asked me to be their mentor. I was a mentor for maybe 20 people, and even evaluating, like, I was different mind the way I look at things. I'd see somebody in their feet to be like that, and I'd spot different things that most people wouldn't. And because, like, in a lot of things like Toastmasters, sometimes they do like the hamburger thing, say something nice, give a little slap, and then say something nice. Whereas I kind of say, as they went through it, the whole journey, but in a loving way. So nobody ever felt attacked. I was always trying to make them better. And I think when you go to a Toastmasters, what I would suggest is if there's a few in your area, go to all of them, because there's kind of cliques as well. There's kind of, it's like a political group in some of them. You're looking and you're going, the ego takes over, but there's some really very good ones. And what I would say is just go all in. Don't just wing it. Don't just turn up. Prepare, practice. You don't have to memorize speeches. That's what I've learned. That's not me. What I do is I know how to, what I'm going to talk about. So I'll remember my intro. I'll have bullet points and my outro. And I speak from the heart. And when I realized the power of that, there was times somebody 2 years later would come back. They might have visited, and they come up to me and they go, I remember last time I was here, you spoke about this. And I'm like, 2 years, and they can remember my speech. So, and ever since then, it's always about, if I'm speaking, it's not about me. It's always about what can I say that will help the people listening there. And I think if you go in with kind of a helping attitude, a giving attitude, and not winging it, just kind of say, okay, this is another kind of, like, take it like a college, university, that I want to be better, study the good people, make notes, ask. Like when I was going to competitions, I wouldn't just get kind of, oh, you came first or whatever. I'd ask everyone, how can I make it better? I'd go around, I'd ask the really good people, what did I say? And I'd get feedback, and then I'd incorporate that into the next round, and then I'd be better again, and I'd do the same thing. Whereas a lot of people just come along, do their speech, and then they're gone. And so,
No, I'm interested in that mindset, because that's where you've shown within 2 to 3 years you got to like be a distinguished Toastmaster, and the discipline and the mindset there helped you accelerate it so far. Is that what you explained the mindset, or is there more to it than?
No, I think, and like, I suppose just for those that don't know, the distinguished Toastmasters kind of is the highest. Some people never get. It's less than 1%, I believe, it actually gets that. But some people take 10 years plus. I did it in 3 years, and because one, being in so many clubs, I was doing so many speeches and just went all in. But I think it's just paying attention to everything. Like, for example, when you record a speech, I would watch it and just turn off the sound so you can see, like the movements you're doing. And then you can just listen to it, because then, because if you're listening and watching, do different things and just make notes and just constantly improve. And I mean, I think surrounding yourself as well, there's a nice community. I mean, I still have friends. I mean, I haven't gone there now for a good few years. It's mainly the podcasting that I'm heavily involved with, but I'm still connected with a lot of people. So there's that element as well. You can actually, because I know there's some people, they move to a different country, and sometimes it's hard trying to meet people. Toastmasters is a great place to meet people, because you go in there because you're there every week. Sometimes we just go for breakfast with my club. In the other ones, we go for dinner afterwards. And then you're spending, some of the meetings maybe 2 hours, 1.5 to 2 hours. But then you've another couple of hours where you're spending time together. You build up good relationships. So there's that element to it as well.
So what do people misunderstand about confidence? Is it something you feel, or is it something you practice?
I think what happens, people, is it's a fear of making a fool of yourself. That how people perceive you. And the thing is, everybody wants you to be, nobody wants you to mumble or to get nervous or say something. They're there to support you. So I think the biggest enemy is yourself. And based on, like, one of my shows is speaking, and at the start I did a lot of, I'm not sure with me, but like, I had a teacher in history, and he was just a nasty guy. Like, and I mean, I was studying, but it just went in one ear and out the other. And one time, I think I got 18%. And in front of the class, he says, my grandmother would do better, and she's dead 10 years. And I laugh at it. I think, okay, but for a 13-year-old child. And he was just screaming at people. And the next, like, I had him for 3 years. Then after that, I had a different teacher who was just loving. And I got 100% in every exam, and an A in the state exam at the end of the when I was 17, which you would think that's impossible. But most people that I talk to have an experience like that in school, where you're learning. I mean, we're learning English when we're young. They make you stand up and read a book, and you start stuttering and bumbling on a word, and the class laughs at you. So your experience is people laughing at you when you're speaking in public, and without even realising it, it's like deep down within you. So you just have to kind of go, that was on them, not on me, and just kind of forgive it and move on, and just say, if I have something to say that can benefit somebody, do it from a place of love, where you're sharing a message, instead of thinking how they'll think of me and look at me. Just think of, how can I help you out? And you just switch it, and the fear leaves.
So for someone listening who lacks confidence in business or speaking, then where should they start today?
If there's not a Toastmasters, just get on your phone and start doing recordings. And don't be doing take 50. I mean, when I'm doing podcasts, it is as it is. It's like, yeah, sometimes something will happen, but don't because if you're taking too much time, it takes the love out of it, and you're no longer enjoying it. You're going, oh, this is a churn, and then you stop doing it. Just record and say what you're doing, or say what's happening in your life, something interesting. Just do a recording, because it's the same with the podcast. I mean, whether there's 10 people or 10 million people listening to this, I don't think of that. I remember, I'm conscious that there's listeners, and I always make sure we include them, but I don't fear it. And it's the same on stage, because, like, I spoke in front of the Toastmasters, like, with, 10, 20, 30. I've spoken competitions, a couple of hundred people, and in Mind Valley, a couple of hundred. And it doesn't matter. It's like, you think that, when there's a load, it's the same as speaking in front of 5, and just don't worry about it. And, there's things that you start doing. Like, some people, even when you're on the stage, the lights are so bright, you don't even see them. So and other times you can, and just look at people that are supportive of it instead of the people that are kind of on their phones or not paying attention. Don't give them the energy. Give the energy to people that are embracing what you're doing. And when you do that, you feel the love, and then you just kind of get more confident in as you're progressing.
Oh, well, okay, so let's move on. You know, your entrepreneurial experience, if you like, is broad, isn't it? It's international. It's and it sounds hard earned as well. You founded over 20 companies across 5 countries, I believe it was. What drove you to keep on creating?
So I've kept creating. So since I've sent that information away, I've six countries in 21. I had to open one in America just recently because the EU make a ruling, and my sponsorship on my podcast didn't work. So yeah, okay, what do I need to do? And within less than a week, I had a company open in Wyoming because I always look at tax optimization, set it up, and got it back running again. So it's, just, I suppose, like everything that I do, sometimes people fear a career like that. If you look at, say, accountants usually or solicitors, they think, I've studied that, that's all I can do. But the reality is everything's a people. It's a person to person. All you need to do is talk to people. You can learn any skills. I've done so many different businesses. I read books on it. I get 5 good books on it. I'll talk to people. I'll study stuff. And then I get into a business, or I'll partner with somebody that has a skill set I don't. And I'll bring the marketing side to things. So, like, some people think, oh, this is what I've done. But if you're miserable, if Sunday you're thinking, oh no, I've got the week ahead of me. You're not a tree, you can move. I'm not saying that you need to jump, because a lot of people have mortgages and, family and things like that. But instead of binge watching Netflix or something like that, spend a few hours learning a new skill set, make a plan, get something going, and build it till it gets to a level where, hey, if I go full time, I can replace my thing. And then you become no longer a slave to a company, that you're in charge of your own life.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Were you, or are you still, by the looks of it, chasing opportunity, freedom, challenge, impact, or a mixture of all 4?
I'm always doing, like, I'll tell you what's going on at the moment. There's one friend reached out to me who he's got somebody that's a big developer, wants to work on these modular homes. So I've been spending over a month working on that, liaising with people, and that's going to be something that is commission based for the lifetime of the customer, because I don't just open the door, do all the work, and then let it happen. So I'm kind of, the experience that I've got allows me to do that. And there's times I've done a food truck. I had everything kind of right. Got the guy that was working in fish and chips, learned in the UK, he's English, and he had restaurants here. Yeah, I mean, the city just kind of, it didn't help there. I lost money and just closed it in the end. And that's okay, but I've learned from it. I've learned I don't want to get into the food industry. It's a hard business. And afterwards, you're seeing like this, this 90% failure rate. So, like, the other thing is, you're learning the whole time that you can apply some of this stuff, especially the marketing. I mean, if you understand marketing, you can do it in one business, you can open a different business, and a lot of the stuff will work. So, like, by studying marketing or copywriting and things like that, that's something that's going to stick with you forever. And pay attention to it.
So what tell us about a few businesses that stand out the most to you, and why, that you've created.
Like, for example, when I moved to Poland, originally I saw properties were cheap. I already had a few in Ireland, and I said, all right, I'll get a few. Then I saw an opportunity. Everyone was buying at that stage. It was around 2004. So I set up a company called Polera. Pol is for Polish, Era is the Irish for Ireland. And I started going to BNI meetings and getting clients from that. And people wanted to buy the property, but then they were like, yeah, but we need it renovated. No problem, we can do that. I done a couple of 100 renovations, and like, even through that, because I worked in construction, I kind of was able to determine who's good and who's bad. And for me, it was always about if you're tidy. The guys that just throw everything, they were always the ones just trying it on. The people that had the big, mat with all the stuff and tidied up at the end of the day, you're safe with them. So if you're ever checking out somebody, that would be a good way of checking a contractor. So then when they wanted that, they said, we need it fitted out. Yeah, we can do that. So we'd buy all the furniture, fit it out. We need it rented and managed. We can do that as well. So we ended up being a lot of add-ons, and then insurance. So we worked with insurance companies. organise the insurance, and then, you know, sometimes the insurance will give you a percentage back of whatever customers that you have. And we did mortgages as well for people, so, you know, we were making some money from that. So there was so many different things that we build. And like I look at that with every business. How can I make something complement it? Like, for example, now with the podcasting, I've got a virtual assistance business that you mentioned. So that kind of complements it. And then when I'm talking to people, it's not that I'm pushing them, I'm just saying this is what I'm doing, which in turn kind of encourages people. So a lot of the clients that I have, they end up getting the VA and they're happy, and then they have a system in place that's working without them using so much time. And I'm always looking at different things. Like, one of the things that I'm doing now is I've got, so you mentioned 6 podcasts. I actually have now 8, right? So within the last month, I added 2 more. And the reason being is, and I'm getting a few others that are going to join me, I'm doing dynamic ad. And how the whole thing came about is I was doing that anyway. The ads kind of working from the platform, but it was very poor. They're taking the cream of the crop. They're paying out 12 to 19%, which is terrible. I know that shouldn't be the way, because we're the creators. We should be getting at least 50, maybe 70%. But no, that's not the way that they're operating. So I said, I can do that myself. So I tested it on myself. I've done all my businesses, and I was able to dynamically insert it. So that's my plan, is to deal with big sponsors and put them in. So I'll have 10 soon, and then get it up to 20, because I've got massive numbers. And so that's like the whole lot came around the podcasting, helping people go on shows, being a coach, and I've done a school group. So it's like I look at what can complement what I'm doing instead of just doing one thing, and not to be kind of like, that's what I learned as well. Try to get something working, because sometimes we do 10 things and we're all over the place. It's like chasing 3 rabbits, you won't catch any. So you have to try to put your focus, get something really working. Once it's washing its face, then you can get the other ones. And that's kind of been my structure.
And this is the basis of this, really. I mean, one of the reasons for the podcast is not just to listen to people's stories, but then offer there's a training opportunity behind that, where people will hopefully try and reinvent themselves. And some of the partners we're talking to, and some of the people like yourself, hopefully people will link in and come to you for advice. But let's talk about building businesses in different countries. You know, what have you learned about building businesses in different countries and cultures?
Well, in Poland, what I learned is, in Ireland, when you do business with somebody, you're in it for the long haul. You know, you're kind of looking out, and you know that you're going to be 10 years later probably still dealing with them. And here, because I built a lot of properties, and I saw a lot of real estate agents were like, in to catch you, gone, and that's it. They never kind of looked at down the long term going down the road. So that was one of the things that I saw. I had a lot of Polish companies, and the tax structure wasn't great, because when you get a VAT, so if I had invoiced you, I have to pay the VAT, even if you didn't pay me. And it's like, that's not nice, because that's a cash flow situation. And there was times that I was due a tax rebate. It was over 50 grand. And they're allowed to wait for 6 months. They waited till the last day to give it to me. And I was like, hey. And then there was one time then we had a cash flow situation, 3 weeks. They sent in the heavies. They were going to take our computers, and we just moved our own money and paid. But it was like, that's how nasty they are. So I realised, I don't want companies in Poland. So I eventually got rid of all my companies. I mean, some of them fell through when I made all the losses, but it was like, no, this isn't good for me. So I opened an Estonian e-residency. So like, there's no corporation tax. So if you've got money there, you can let it grow away. And then there's a double taxation agreement, and dividends, you pay 20%. I mean, a lot of people are happy in paying 20%. I always look at even reducing that. Usually I just do that so you see the spike. Right? So I had accountants, they were auditors, and I had got a tax bill. So what I did is I bought a book, Tax Magic. It was written by a guy from the Revenue. I went through it from page 1 to the very end, and I said, can I do this, and this? Yeah, I got a tax rebate. And I realised at that stage, same in Poland, most accountants, they're not trying to reduce your tax bill, they're just trying to make sure everything's okay. Nobody cares about your money as much as you do. I've had lots of court cases with the wipeout. I've had same with the legal. Every case I've won, it was either me representing myself or telling the solicitor things I spotted, and it was what I paid attention to. Whereas unfortunately some people, they just sit back thinking that the solicitor's got his best interest at heart, and all he's interested is in what's in your wallet. So make sure, if you're a business owner, take full control of everything. I mean, obviously some legal are very good and you need their help, but pay attention to everything that's being said and write pieces of paper or whisper to them, because when you spot something, it can be the difference between winning and losing.
Okay, so across all the ventures that you've been involved in, what, for people listening, what patterns separate business that grow from business that struggle?
What I did at some stages was, if something wasn't working, and I had a belief system, which was, I should give myself a slap in the head for having that belief system. But what I would do is I would feed something that's doing very well to something that wasn't, living in hope that it'll start working. And then I'll have two things working very well. And what you do is you end up kind of destroying both businesses. So if it's not washing its face, it's dirty, and throw it away. And it's okay to walk away from a business. So when you see something's working, pay attention to what's working and put your energy behind that. Because what we tend to do is, if we've 3 or 4 things going, oh, this isn't working, and you tend to give that a lot of energy and take your eye off the ball, and the one that's feeding you starts going down. And then sometimes it's too late to get it to go back up. So if you've got a few balls in the air, sometimes it's better to throw one away and put all your energy to the one that's actually the most successful.
So what's the biggest lessons you've learned then from entrepreneurship that experience can teach? I think it's, what's the biggest advice you can give?
I mean, I've had over 100 court cases and I saw so much corruption. The biggest thing that I would encourage everybody to do is learn about sovereignty. Learning about whether it's common law, natural law, sovereignty, UCC, people, you realise the power we have, because we're all slaves. If you look at how the whole world is working, we're all slaves. It's like they take money off you. You have to pay at the pump. You have to do everything. We are slaves. And when you realise the power that you've got, because everything they want, it's always about sign that there, sign that there. And when you don't sign it, they can't do what, and sometimes they're writing to you as the Mr. Mark Kennedy, all capitals. I tell them, that's not me. I'm the living soul. They can't do anything. And it's a good bit of information to go into that. But as a business owner or even an individual, that's the most powerful thing you can learn. And the reason I got into it was because I had so many things taken off me, and it was like done fraudulently, and I was like, how are they getting away with this? And I got some people on my show, and I was like, this is interesting. Then done a course, read over 20 books. I'm still studying it, still learning it, but I'm realizing the power that it has. And you could say, oh, it's learn about accounting, learn about this. The main thing is we were born free, and you want to stay free. So that's why you should actually understand, let's say, sovereignty.
So let's get into that a little bit. You're facing a personal liability of over $5 million, you said. What actually happened there, and what does a moment like that do to you mentally and emotionally?
I had a lot of syndicates. I was building apartments, I had a big commercial, a lot of different developments, and I was doing well. I had about, between even security guys, now I had about 14 people on the books in Poland. I was doing well. When the crash happened, the investors that I had, and they were big boys, some of them were worth 20 million, they started getting in trouble. I thought it was a hiccup. I didn't think it was going to be like it was. I didn't think it was going to be a wipeout. So I started putting money into different things and said, look, I'll charge you 10% interest, and at the end of the year, if you can't pay, I'll just increase my shareholding, thinking everything was grand. They got completely wiped out, all their assets taken, and eventually deck started falling. And I mean, I was going to banks and say the commercial, I said, look, give me interest only, I can split it into 3. As soon as I missed payments, they sent in the bailiffs. Yeah, everything, they just took the whole lot. How I overcome it, I mean, it was a shock to the system. I'm not saying that I didn't get depressed over it, because they took my house with all my belongings in Ireland and everything. I mean, I had loads of assets. The whole lot was wiped out. Accounts emptied. You're looking at a bank account of one, and it's like minus $500,000, and I wasn't expecting that. So meditation helped me, breath work. I started kind of getting into the meditation. One of the things was I came across a thing called the 6-phase meditation. And then I kind of created my own version. And the main things were grateful. Because when you lose something, you're getting abused. I don't know that they still do that, but you've the credit card companies just ringing you daily, abusing you. You've got the banks ringing you, abusing you, threatening to put you on the newspaper and all this. And you're on your knees, your pockets are empty, and they're just trying to kick you into the head. So I was like, Going, all right, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful my parents got my back. They know I didn't do anything fraudulent. I know I've got a very good relationship with them. My son, I get a cuddle from my son. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my belly. So I started thinking of the positive. The next one was the act of forgiveness. Because with all the different cases, there was even builders. They had done stuff and they didn't put in the drainage pipes just to try to get more invoices in. And I had court cases with that. And it was like, there was a lot of anger because I wouldn't have been in the situation where I was only for some of these people. Like one guy, he was renting the commercial. He had a fish business. And like the water bill was going through the roof and we couldn't figure it out. And he had tapped into the actual fire hydrant and robbing the water from that. But I mean, I was caught to pay the bill. And I said, all right, I need to start forgiving these people. Some were easy, others weren't. There were big numbers. And what I did is I brought them back to the child. I said, we have unconditional love for a baby. When you see a baby, it's just a beautiful experience. Baby grabs your finger, baby coos, it's lovely. I said, they were once like that. And external circumstances made them who they were. So whether it was alcoholic parents, abusive parents, or even sometimes, especially now, parents unfortunately have to take 2 and 3 jobs. They're doing their best to look after their family, but they're not there. The kid starts hanging around with the wrong people, goes down a slippery road, and then they become who they were. And by bringing them back to the child, I was able to forgive them. But what it does is it actually frees it from you, because it's like the memory of pain is poisoning us. We're thinking of it, we're getting angry. And once you forgive, that's no longer there. And you let it go and you move it on. And how you know is sometimes you talk to people about a trauma they've done, even a relationship, different thing, and you can see them being triggered and they get angry and sometimes they're crying or they're shaking because they're reliving it. It's still in them. And when you forgive, you get past that stage and you get to move on. And it just allows you to sleep at night instead of thinking and having anger issues.
Yeah, that sounds like, I was going to ask you that, but that sounds like the biggest lesson you've learned from that is forgiveness is probably the best route forward. So let's get on to, what we're doing today. We're in an environment with podcasts that seems to be, I wouldn't say the word saturated, but everyone seems to be having a go. Some of us are better than others, there's no doubt. But let's talk about that. Why start? You've launched 6 podcasts. With, as we've already said, reaching some of the highest 0.5% globally, as you said. What has podcasting become such an important platform for you?
Well, one of the things that you said there is, and a lot of people think that is saturated because they see, there's over 4 million podcasts. Loads of people do. I even get people writing to me going, hey, we can sell you the list of over 4 million podcasts. And I just laugh because they're wrong. There's active, which means released an episode in less than 28 days. I know the seasonal ones, less than 400,000.
Yeah.
As people do 3 episodes, they're gone. They do 10, they're gone. It's not saturated. And I think why it's become so popular is BBC, RTE in Ireland, CNN regurgitating lies. People are aware of that and they can get good information from a podcast, listen when they want, and they can listen to part of it or they can speed it up. And I think it's a good medium, and you start kind of following the ones to do it. And the thing is, it's not difficult. It's easy. You can get a mic and just a USB into the thing. At the start, I was doing a load of editing it. No, it goes out as it is. There's software like Adobe for podcasters. So sometimes you'll get somebody on. Like we did a lot of lives. And one time there was a brilliant conversation. One of the guys was on his laptop. And I thought, this is such a shame because it was... And when I put it through the Adobe, it was perfect and I was able to release it. So there's software that actually helps you as well to put it out. And you can be a specialist or you can actually be interested. So the crypto, I'm curious about podcasting and I bring on guests and I'm learning from that. But by me being curious and having a different mindset, I thought it'd be just beginners, but there's experienced crypto people kind of writing to me going, I didn't know that. So you're quite... And that's the thing, and you can learn as well. And for example, some people, if they're entrepreneurial, want to do their business, you can set up a podcast on a certain team. Sometimes if you're trying to get into a business, the receptionist is locking the door. She's not even letting you in. You can say, hey, I've got a show. I'd like to interview the CEO. He's happy to come on. You now have an hour and maybe 2 or 3 between the back and forth who could potentially be a client for you. So you don't need to get 100,000 downloads. You can just have 20 and it's good. And that's another important thing as well. Sometimes people are looking at the metrics. They're looking at the Rogans, the Mr. Beats, all these big boys, and they think, it's like the Toastmasters. If there's 20 people in a room and they come back next week, you would go back and you would be happy to speak there. And sometimes 2 will leave and 3 come or whatever. And it just, if you kind of visualize this them on a seat, you will appreciate that if there's 20 people listening to your show, that's a lot of people, and it's great. And it'll just keep growing as long as you stay in the game and just kind of start working on the marketing and different things. There's a lot of tricks that you can do, but it's not hard and not to fear it.
So what do they get wrong then? What do people get wrong when they start a podcast, do you think?
I think sometimes people assume that they're going to start a podcast and they're going to have sponsors running towards their show with their checkbook out. Like, it's not like that. It's like, it's a slow game. You have to build it. And I mean, you can be selling your own business. And the other thing is they don't take into account the time, because sometimes people are procrastinating. So they're trying to get everything. I've heard of people spending 8 hours editing a show. I mean, I could not do that. So if you're going to do 8 hours, that means that every time you're podcasting, you're going, that's a day out of my life. I don't want to be, so compress it. Don't spend so much time. Like a lot of times, like at the start, I was using Audacity and I was taking out all the pauses. I was taking out the ahs and the ums. If you're listening to a conversation, there is pauses. There is ahs and ums. And the thing is, sometimes you say something and I contemplate before instead of just answering. But your listeners are doing the exact same because it's triggering something. And by taking out these pauses, you're making it unnatural. So sometimes you kind of leave it as it is. And how I kind of saw it, I was watching like Patrick Bet David and others. They're going out raw as is. These are very successful shows, and kind of learning from people as well. Just don't wing it. Just say, okay, I was a guest very early this morning. It's rarely I do that. It was like 7:30 my time. And usually what's happening with some podcasters, no, they take the content from inside the podcast and then they extract it for the first minute to grab the listener's attention. Great, it works. It's a lot of time. I know it would. I don't have time to do it. That is a lot of work. What he did is he had them points as if we were just talking. He asked me that. Then he had the introduction. And then he went through it. And then he was kind of like, I've never seen anybody do that. But that's a great way of doing it. Because no, he doesn't have to edit it. He's done it as if. But he still made sure he covered them points. But you can be creative in the way you do things. Because if you look at all the things we're doing, like, I'm putting my shows out on BitChute, YouTube, Rumble. Like I've got over 500,000 views on YouTube. BitChute. Most people don't even know what BitChute is. But when I'm doing it, I'm cutting and pasting. I'm doing all the different platforms at once. Cut, paste. That way I'm compressing my time. And it's not wasting my time. Whereas if you're doing that, then I'll do the other one when I get a chance again. Then you're going, this is taking so long. Hence why some people get to about 10 episodes and they're going, I have enough. Whereas anyone I'm kind of working with, I said, commit to a year, because not only will you start enjoying the process, you'll compress the process, but you'll be talking to guests that will educate you. You'll learn information that you thought, I didn't know that. And it doesn't mean that if somebody says something is true, but it can actually open the box and you can go, I'm going to find out more about this. And I've learned so much from my guests that, podcasting has served me very.
So do you think the growth's more about guests or consistency, content niche, or something else?
There's a few things. There's one is a very good interview. It has to be, there's engagement, there's good questions and stuff like you're making sure we're covering a lot. This is great because it's engaging. So that's a very important thing. The other thing is if you're putting it out, like I done this with my Polish one. My Polish one combined between the audio and the video and shorts is like over 4 million. And I always put it out on a Monday and a Wednesday. I wish I could. I'm trying to do that with all the others, but there's so many moving parts. It's very hard for me. But if you've got 1 or 2 shows, if you can do that. The show I listen to is Blind Boy. Every Wednesday, I know the show is there. Whereas if you put it out randomly, your listeners don't know. And then if you're taking a break or you're doing a seasonal, please let them know. Because I done that once. I took a kind of Christmas break and it extended another month. And I came back thinking the numbers would just keep going up like they always were. And I took a dip because I didn't let the listeners know. So make sure if you're doing it seasonal or you're taking a break, let them know. But as far as sequencing, that's an important thing. And the other thing is, like, a lot of times people, they spend a lot of time preparing and then they just put it out to a few things, LinkedIn, X and Facebook and gone, and then they're on the next one. You have to be more strategic with your marketing. So the Polish one, I'm in about 50 Facebook groups. I'm in Polish in the UK, Polish in Ireland, Polish foreigners in Warsaw, foreigners in Poland, Chicago. Whereas a lot of the podcasters, they're in podcasting groups and they're sharing their episode in podcasting groups. You're not going to find one listener there because I tell people it's like going to a doctor's convention looking for a patient. You're not going to find him. So find what niche you're in, find groups for that, whether it's LinkedIn. And the other thing is, a lot of times what happens with the podcasters is they try to be on 20 social media platforms. Master one. You can throw it out there on a few, but to get the social media to work, you have to engage. If you were on TikTok this morning, now, just say you looked at 100 videos, how many did you give a thumbs up to or a heart? We tend to enjoy stuff. So then podcasters think there's nobody engaging. It's not really. But if you look at the metrics, there is people watching it. It's just, they'll tell you if they don't like it. So the thing is, get creative with your marketing and kind of say, like, if you're on YouTube, use vidIQ, use TubeBuddy, use different things and start studying the analytics and go, okay, this one worked way better than that. Why was that? Oh, this thumbnail, I used hashtags, I posted at a certain time, and just keep. Whereas if you're trying to do that with 10 of them, it's not going to work. So what you do is master one and then go on to the next, or start liaising with people. Someone's good at Instagram and someone else is good at TikTok. Start swapping. Sharing information.
It does. You know, people do need to understand that and not get down by that. So in the Digging Deep podcast, which is the construction podcast, it's more boisterous and there's some funny stories and bits and pieces like that. But what we found is that some of those things that we think that's a gold moment gets, I don't know, about 15 comments and about 500 likes, you know, and then something that you think that's not that, well, boring to us, if you like, but it's a factual and it's engaging. You know, we get 180,000 and like 700-800 comments. And I think what I've learned is probably a little bit about consistency, just making sure that you're consistent. I don't know what you feel like, you know, that level of repetition. What has that taught you, do you think?
No, you see, sometimes people, they'll do the shorts and then they might know. If your content is kind of regular, the platforms help you. And what I've learned as well is, say with the shorts from the interview, a lot of times people take the shots, whether they're using, say, Riverside now, or a lot of Opus clips, different things. It can create brilliant clips. But for me to know where the episode is, people then have to go find the full episode here. Or then they'd say, find the episode in the comments, and they'd write it. LinkedIn doesn't want you to leave LinkedIn. Facebook doesn't want you to leave Facebook. So they're not going to show that to thousands of people. So what we do is when we're doing the shorts, I use my website because I think most people are looking on their phones these days as opposed to on the computer. If one of our clients, she prefers the QR code. Yeah, it's great. If I was watching on the thing, I can just pick it up. But if I'm on my phone, I can't use the QR code. It doesn't work like that. But by doing that, we don't have to write, hey, find the episode here. If people like it, they go, that's interesting. And they can just click or go to the website and find the show and follow. And so sometimes you just have to see what they're doing because they're constantly tweaking things. Something that's working overnight just changes. Like you get massive numbers and then all of a sudden it just drops. And you're like, what happened there? But if you're paying attention to it, you know, like you said, sometimes I've often thought that this is brilliant, this is going to take off. And it's like nothing. And then I'm looking at some stuff and it's like, how did that get thousands of views? And you're trying to figure it out. I mean, one time they done the hashtags wrong. And so that means there was no hashtags. And it worked. And you're just looking. But as long as you're paying attention, you're tweaking. And it's like just small increments. And not the compound effect, try to get 1% increase weekly. At the end of the year, you're doing good. And just keep doing that. Instead of just hoping. If you're paying attention and watching the analytics, like I've constantly been looking at it, you know, the sound, the music. I mean, at one stage I had a beatboxer and the Polish. And I took it out after a few years because I don't know, I just thought, it's not serving. And I got over 20 comments. Thanks, that was cringeworthy. I'm so glad you took it out. And even now, sometimes I'm getting 1-star Apple reviews saying, I love the podcast, but the beatboxing drives me crazy, hence why a 1-star. And it's not even there anymore. So, you know, there's times we think, hey, this is serving us. Let's just pay attention. Because, like, I had an interview one time. The guy was doing, you know, the bars for bugs made of bugs. And it was kind of a hot topic at the time. And I thought, this is good. But the guy kind of looked like he either got out of bed or he was going to go into bed. He brought zero energy, and it was just, he was a CEO, just an arrogant kind of guy. And I was like, I don't want to put this out, but I said, it's a hot topic, I put it out. It went to 8%, just dropped to 8% across the board. Whereas I have some episodes that will stay at 100%. And it's like, there's times you pay attention to that as well. Or I've had people doing a pitch fest. They come on the show and every question they're going back to how their website can help you. And I just don't put it out. So it's like you take control of your show as well when people are trying to, just push their sales and things like that. And if you feel a show like it's, hey, this isn't going to serve my listeners, even though you've done it, sometimes you go, this goes into the backbench. I'm not going to waste my listeners' time by putting this out.
Well, I think I want to push yours a little bit because I want to go on to one thing that I think I've used before in the past and I think is useful. We'll talk a little bit about the VA world. You've spoken about virtual assistants can help your business go. What made you see the value in that model?
When the Polish were coming across, a lot went to England and a lot went to Ireland. I set up a recruitment company, and I was actually placing a lot of them. And then when I had to move, I had to walk away from it, unfortunately, because I was doing well, because I would have had to be based there. With the podcasting, I'd started using Fiverr and Upwork. I check the reviews and I go, okay, this person seems grand. And yeah, sometimes they'd start off okay, and then it just fizzled, and you're like, I'm chasing this person. And same with Upwork, you're seeing screenshots and you're seeing, okay, yeah, they're working on it. And then after a while, it's like, yeah, I can see they've got my, Facebook open, but what are they doing? I don't see anything. And it was like, every one of them were I'd say they could have 10 people, as if pretending they're just working for one. So I realized that model wasn't great. So when I formed the VA with my partner, she's in Pakistan, and we've got a team of people. It was always kind of more packages as well. Some people say, oh, how much for an hour? And I go, it depends what you want, because some people want an app. Some people want, a website, they want them managing that. So we sit down with them. We're never pushing a sale. We're just saying, look, if you want us or you don't. But usually what we're doing is packages. So for example, the way that I'm actually doing my podcast is when I upload it, they use ClickGrab. I don't have to be putting my stuff on Dropbox or Google Drive or so, because that's all time consuming. They just grab it, and then they have access to all of my accounts. They blast it out in all the different places. It works. I get thousands of downloads from what they're doing. And that to me, I'm happy with that. And that's what we're doing for our clients as well. And, we sit down. Some people want that they have a person, but they tend to be the packages. They prefer it that way, because you're not looking over your shoulder to make sure we're doing it, because it's in our interest that we're doing what we said we do. We'd have, depending on the level of the customer, sometimes we'll have a weekly meeting, some a monthly meeting, and we're just kind of reviewing everything, and we're sharing our knowledge as well, because if we're working with people, we're sharing our marketing tips, because if you're successful, then you want somebody else to do more. We're benefiting as well by sharing our knowledge. Whereas it's kind of like what we were discussing earlier with Paul. Sometimes people are just in it for the, quick thing and they're gone. A lot of the VAs are kind of like that. Okay, get the money, and then, I get maybe a month, 3 months, and then the next person. Whereas we're kind of in it for the long haul, and making sure that with the packages, and a lot of our clients, they're recommending people as well to us. So, they're happy that way. And
so as a business owner then, what should we stop doing ourselves far earlier than we usually do?
It's kind of look at what's the time it's taking you to do certain tasks and what's sucking your energy. So, if you're coaching, say, that's your biggest ticket item, that your time spent doing that. Posting on social media, it's important, but if you can get somebody to do that at a tenth of the price of what you're making, isn't it better that you spend more time doing that, or even kind of engaging in the conversations? So it's kind of the lower ticket items for the hourly rate, say, that you're charging for yourself would be the first. And sometimes it's like things that suck the energy out of you. It's, there's some things that, do you like doing accountants and stuff like that? Do you like doing things? Most people don't. I have everything set up in such a way now. I just send my invoice to a system and it's all automated and everything. I have a brilliant system. But there's times where you'd have to be doing the calculations and making sure. And it was a time suck. It was something that you'd procrastinate about doing it because you hated it. When you have things like that, you can outsource that as well. When there's stuff that you hate, don't be doing it. And they're the things that you should start outsourcing.
That's good advice, actually. If it don't fit your You know, because some entrepreneurs or some owners are finance driven. That's what they love, doing the finance, and some love the marketing, and they don't always mix, do they? So, you know, that's really good advice. So, you know, books, learning. You know, you mentioned books. I like to move on. You know, because I've listened to a few people, and I think it was Bill Gates. I watched a documentary on him once, and he was saying, "I read 14 books a week," and I was always one of these people that thought, really, because I'm not a book reader. I'm one of, you know, I do a lot about learning styles, and if you give me a book, I probably would take in 50% of it. But if you showed me on a video, I'd learn it off by heart, almost a photographic memory. So you read about 100 books a year. So obviously that's your style. You know, why is learning such a big part of your life? I think that's the most important question. Not the why you read and not watch, but why is the learning such a big part of your life?
I'm just trying to develop myself. So, like, as I mentioned, the sovereignty, it's like, that's going to make me better. That's going to keep away the bad boys from me. That's going to stop people taking money out of my account and I'm in control. The health things, learning things that, you know, usually when I see the government telling us to do something, I do the opposite or find out why. And like, so I don't, like before it used to be just all businessy books. Now I read a lot of different things. And plus, when I get the guests on, I used to go away and get the books. And I say, hey, I'm promoting you. Hey, send me the book. I don't want digital. People are happy sending digital. I need a physical book because I like to step away from technology as well. And, you know, make notes and things like that. But even if you, like, I mean, sometimes I can read a book and you could ask me what it's about and I'd be like, I know. But I think we're like a computer and I think it's there. And sometimes then we could be in a conversation and it'll just come back up. You know, it's strange the way the mind works. But what you can do is you can go into, say, the AI and just say you know of a book that's good. You can say, create this in a video format for me. And it'll create a video in 30 minutes that you would then learn the best parts of that. And that's okay because you're using the way that you like it. And something like I've got audiobooks. For some reason, like, it's okay if I go for a walk, I used to listen to books, but I don't retain it. It's like I can hear it, but it doesn't, for some reason I'm not able to retain it. But when I'm reading it, I can. And I'm understanding, and it's a kind of a form of escapism as well, getting away. It's just kind of like, I love being outside in the garden, especially I end up reading way more in the summer because I'm outside, you know, in nature and reading. And what I do as well is I read a few different books, because what happens is people, they get a book and then it's kind of like, I've had enough, and then you kind of don't feel like it, and then it takes you a while to get. Sometimes you can spend 2 months before you read a book. If you read a few books, sometimes I could have 5 or 6 on the go, and I get a bit tired with it. I close in the next chapter or something else, and that way I'm able to get through the 100 books in a year. And but it's like I don't just read, I'm paying attention and I'm finding stuff. And if it's a brilliant book and he's recommending something, that's how I go, okay, if he's recommending it, it must be good. And usually that kind of works as well. Or when you talk to people that are kind of avid readers and they kind of tell you stuff they've read and what they like, they could recommend something and you go, okay, that's something. And I end up getting a book based on somebody recommending, and hence why most of the books that I read are good. And I've got into this because I got thousands of books, like, but what I've started doing is when I know now that I won't read it again, I have a box in the hall and I put it into the box, and when friends come over, take what you want. It's like I'm giving it new life instead of just putting it on the shelf letting dust gather. So I'm trying to get, you know, a bit minimalistic in there.
So you feel that have they helped you navigate the harder periods of your life and your business journey?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because, like, you tend to find something within where you are. You know, there's, like, for example, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Like, that's a really good book. And that's, you know, that's 100 years older or whatever it is, but it's an old book. There's some fantastic tips on that will help you when you're going to networking, how to speak to clients. It's like, just pay attention to it. And if you're doing it, because sometimes people go, oh, I know that. Loads of people go, I know that. But are you doing it? Because if you know it and you're not doing it, you don't know it. You have to be doing it. And that's one that, like, read that. And there's just different, find passionate ones as well. Like, you know, just things that actually just makes you curious. Because I think by, like, even say painting or different things that you do in life, that gets your creativity going. And when you have your creativity going, it helps your business, because then you start getting ideas. Whereas a lot of the times what happens is we get so deep down, and when things aren't going right, we just work harder and harder and we're not even looking after ourselves. So it's like, that's the time you step away. That's the time you go for a weekend away. That's the time that you go, whatever you like, golf, play golf, fishing, play fishing, painting, paint. And just because when you're painting, you're not thinking of your business. You're thinking of the next stroke that you're doing. If you're fishing, you're in your own little thoughts, and it's find something that brings you calmness, which in turn takes you away from the kind of the drudgery of business, and that gets you creative. And by being creative, you get better ideas, which helps your business.
So, what kinds of books is shaping your thinking at the moment? Is there anything in particular, or is there a type of book you're reading at the moment in your life that's helping you now?
I read one on mind shiftness. It's there actually, and I got him on the show. Rewriting your reality, and that was about kind of getting rid of being conditioned. That you're conditioned and how we're thinking and how to break that. So that was one on that. I read some on the meditation, on the sovereignty. I've got some stuff with Peter Stone, and like he's given real life examples. So as you're doing that, you're going, oh, because I actually implement things that I do. So when you get books of people that have done it and they're showing you how to do it, then I go, oh, I like this, and then you start doing it instead of just reading a book going, this is interesting.
Yeah, because you've become quite passionate about exposing corruption, and you say helping make the world better, and like people do. Where does that drive come from? Is that because you've been dealt a few bad blows, or?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I saw it for years. I saw that, I could see that the way the government was working in Ireland and the different things. I was like, I always could see corruption, but when I got kind of wiped out, that was one thing I saw, a load of corruption with courts and bailiffs and banks. And then with the lockdown, I could see even more, the different things they were doing and pushing. And it was like every single thing that they're doing health-wise, it could be changed in the morning. They're stopping people having natural healthy stuff, FDA, yet they will push out toxins as if it's okay. And it's kind of just let people become aware. It's the way that I do things is this households, unfortunately, that have fought and broke up because one believes one thing, the other believes the other. Same with politics, and especially in the States, you're Republican or you're Democrat, and they fall out of it. The thing is to come from a place of compassion and just kind of understand where they're at, never attacking, but just kind of telling them the journey. I once believed this, but then such and such a thing. And by doing it that way, they're more inclined to listen instead of attacking. And that's all you're doing. You're just dropping a few stones. Like you have to try to get into their head, whereas most people are trying to go my way or the highway, and they start pushing their agenda. And that's like a magnet. It just pulls away. So once you kind of come into kind of telling them, well, I used to do this, and now, based on my knowledge, I started researching all these different things, and now I think this way. And then people are more kind of, that's interesting. Doesn't mean that they'll change their mind straight away, but you kind of open the can so that they'll let more in.
So you've also explored sovereignty, as you said. We've said sovereignty. What led you down that path then?
It was with all the cases I had. I kind of said, how are they doing it? And one of the guests that we got, her name was BB Backus. Unfortunately, she passed last year. But she was working in Florida, I believe. This is going back probably 40 years ago, selling a lot of properties. And there was grants for the low-income people. And she exposed that the city were actually pocketing it. And they locked her up for 8 years. They were wrong. She was right. But they done it, and she was like, how did they do this? And she ended up studying kind of UCC and things like that. And then when she came on, I was like, okay, so she was talking about the straw man, the kind of all capitals. And then you, like, when you start looking at it, it's like they're trading us. When you're born, the birth certificate, everything's a lie. We are slaves. And when you start looking at it, so then I done a course with her, and then I just started getting different guests on and different reading books. And I realised the power, because I was still being attacked at some stages. I got bailiffs to back off. I got court to parent. I mean, I had a criminal case against me that I won, but it was like all fraudulent. And based on my knowledge, I was able to protect myself. So it's kind of like, how are they able to do this to us? And by just learning these different things that you can keep them out.
So when you think about humanity and the future, what changes do you believe are most needed then?
We're on a kind of precipice at the moment because with the AI, unfortunately, a lot of them are run by the bad boys, and they're pushing a certain agenda. And like, if we look at it, loads of jobs are disappearing. Like, you go to the supermarket. I remember one time in Lidl, I was saying, when's the Christmas party? I'm working here, I'm checking my stuff out. Like, they're looking stupid at me, but it's like the reality is less and less people there. You see the cars. When you look at the trucks, and they've got all this system in place for trucks to be driving on the road, there's millions and millions. And all these corporations, their main aim is to sell stuff. But they're replacing everybody with robots. They're replacing gardeners with robots, chefs with robots, masseuses, everything. And everyone is like, this is great, this is great. There's people going to shops, there's nobody working in the shop. You just put in the QR code and the robots bring out the stuff. We're going to get to a stage where nobody will have the money to buy the product because they don't need the people anymore. And I've come across people that were working, they said, you have to teach the AI and you're going to lose your job. So they kind of needed the money, and then they fired them. And then they've AI doing their job. And it's very hard. You see people, when you start talking to people now, once they're out of a job, they're trying to get into another job, and it is so difficult. So that scares me. There's other sides that it can be used to help. So like, if you've got medical information, there's so many errors in the medical side of things. If you've got a good AI that's trained properly, it can spot things 10 times better than a doctor, which can be very good. It can help something or prevent something. So things like that. Media with the podcasting, I think that's not going to go away. But the fact that they're building so many data centers for this AI, and we're all thinking it's the best thing since sliced bread, I think between the 5G and the AI, it'd be better off if they were burnt down, because we're not getting closer to people. There's just everybody, and most people are struggling. So we have to be very careful with what's going on.
No, we had an episode on the other podcast about the youth. We've got a massive high in UK youth unemployment, bigger than we've had pre-COVID, because those entry-level jobs seem to have gone based on some of that. You wouldn't want to go, how can you get into law now? Because the first step is being a legal assistant. You don't need a legal assistant anymore, do you? That's a whole episode on its own. But, we talked, I was going to ask you about, with everything you built, you lost, and you learned, how did you create calmness in your life? But I think you've answered that a little bit when you mentioned quite, deeply about forgiveness and being able to move on. But so what does success mean then now compared to 10 or 20 years ago?
I think it's like every day I'm doing something I love, not building something that, when I get this, I love this massive house, I get this certain car or whatever. It's like, what did I do today that I enjoyed? So I make sure that I'm eating as healthy as I want. I like to walk a lot. I went to the gym before this thing, so I had an interview before it, and then I went to the gym, because sometimes you'd be saying, oh, yeah, I'll get around it, and then it doesn't happen. It's like, no, I'm making the priorities in life, but which in turn clears my head, makes me feel better. And even if I'm outside reading, I'm watching the bees landing on the flower and the flower bending. I'm totally present. So I would like to live to 150, 200. Is it possible the way technology's going? Yes, I probably think it could be. But if I died tomorrow, would I be regretting it, thinking, I was working too hard, I wasn't enjoying life? I make sure that I'm present. When I'm with my son, I'm with my son. I'm doing things. I'm not I'm here working and then not giving him attention. Yeah, obviously there's some days that things kind of clash and things like that. But in general, I'm playing ping pong, I'm doing things. And when you live life that you can look back at the end of the night and go, yeah, that was a good day. You're being present instead of living for the future. Because even if we look at the pensions, right? Because this is something that's, I think, another big lie. Everybody's kind of put their money into their pension. Look for your pension. Which, when you retire, which used to be 65 and 60 for women, now it's kind of 70. It's coming closer to 70. And sometimes, unfortunately, your spouse is dead at that stage, and you're kind of shuffling along because of all the ailments, because of all the toxins you've put in your body, and you think you're going to get a camper van and tour the country and enjoy life. You should be enjoying life now, and they'll tax you, because when you hit 50 in Ireland, I got I had a pension and a bond that were contributed by the company. I never put into them. They paid full contribution. So I said, every year they're telling me it's going to be worth so much, and every year it's the same price. If it goes up to 8%, you'll have this. If it goes up 6%, you'll have this. And next year it's the exact same price. And I was like, okay, they're making money, I'm not. So I cashed it in. When you hit 50, you can get 25% tax free, but then they tax the rest at 50% on the bond and the pension. And with my knowledge, I don't think one accountant or solicitor would have been able to do this. I got every penny back. I got the check from the government of the money that they had taxed. And I think even though it's good to look forward to the future, plan for the future, but don't be putting so much money into a pension thinking that's when I'm going to enjoy my life, because it's better to put half it in and start taking holidays and memories that you do now instead of planning for, when I'm 70, I'm going to have the life of my, have it now.
Yes, life still gets noisy. So, no matter how, if you're doing work that you enjoy, whatever, which is one of the key goals. But what grounds you today then when it does get noisy?
What's that? Sorry, what ground?
What grounds you? What brings you back down to earth? What, when life's, because I'm sure you've got situations, even though you're enjoying your work and your business, that there's some struggles, and there'll be struggles in personal life. Is there anything that brings you back down and you think, okay, I can start again, everything's okay?
I think it's breath work is a good one, but it's like not to get panicky, because usually we start, like, that was a big curveball that happened to me less than a month ago. It was like the EU made some ruling, and the UK as well, that you can't have the spot. It's like GDPR. They can do what they want. They take all your data, but when it's for you and you're making money from it, they just turn off the data. I didn't panic. I just said, all right, what can I do? First of all, I started reaching out to people that had companies. Hey, I want to do this. I'd be having an invoice once a month. And they were a bit afraid suddenly. And I said, all right, I'll set up my own. And it's like, I do that with everything. It's like, we'll always get curveballs. It's how you react to the curveball. It's like, don't panic. And sometimes you have to, if you feel overwhelmed, step away, go for a walk, just relax. Sometimes when you're deep in it, you're just losing your energy and you're not focusing, you're not getting creative. And that's the time you just step away. Just step away. And it's okay to step away and have an early night's sleep, or just go for a walk. Maybe if you can, take a little break, go away for, a weekend. And then when you come back, you're refreshed and you start thinking, and it's like, yeah, most people, that's what they do. They dig deeper and they're just getting, I'll get it sorted, and then you're not firing on all cylinders. You're just chugging along. And the main thing, be okay with stepping away. Okay, well, as we get to wrap up, I always ask a few quick fire round questions. I don't really, send these to any of the guests before. So just a one word or one sentence. If you can't answer it, don't answer it. But so let's get into that. What one business lesson everyone should learn earlier? It's a people business. It's like everything is person to person. So learn the skill of communication.
Okay. So one mistake entrepreneurs repeat too often.
One I see is people go, it's tax deductible. And they buy shit they don't need because they go, it's tax deductible. It's your money. Don't be thinking that that's money that you've just saved. They're taking off the tax man. Learn tax optimization.
So, best piece of podcasting advice in one sentence.
Care for your listeners. They'll feel it and the numbers will come.
Good advice. One book that has had a major impact on you.
I mean, I mentioned how to win friends and influence people, but there's so many. There's actually different ones that have different. On the health side, there was one. It was the Wheel of Fortune, and the reason being is the guy studied the people in the Himalayas living over 100 years, and then he fed the food to rats, because a rat of 2 years is the equivalent. I'm sorry, no, I'm dragging out of it, but it's equivalent to a human of 50. By learning that, and then they gave him the poor man's food of India, and they started having all the diseases and everything, reproductive problems and everything. They gave him the food of the UK, the poor man in UK. They became cannibalistic after 16 days. So I've learned the power of food, and by looking at a lot of things, they say, oh, this causes tumours in rats like aspartame, but it's okay for humans when I see that. So that book has kind of made me health-wise very conscious. The Wheel of Health by Dr. D. Wrench, I believe his name was.
Okay, so one word that sums up your journey so far.
Entertaining.
That's good. Yeah, it's been quite colourful by the looks of it. I'm very interested to read your best-selling book. I think when it comes, because you've experienced things that people need to experience. I think to be a successful business person, I think you need an element of failure. My dad told me that, and it was only when I had a failed business opportunity that I really learned the most out of that situation. But to close up
the book, because you said about a book, I wrote a book,
Yeah.
but I didn't publish it. I printed it properly, gave it to 20 people, and it was all about the exposure and a lot of things that I knew, exposing charities that like sometimes it's 1% goes thing, and 10 people said I'd be whacked for the information that I released, and I was like, I don't care. And then my mom said, what about our kids? And I was like, oh, okay. So I did write a book, but I'm planning on, there's a few in the pipeline anyway.
Yeah, that's good. So closing question for you then. And it's for someone listening who feels they've had a few setbacks, lost momentum, or need to reinvent themselves, because this is what we're talking about. What would you say to them?
It's okay. Most of the time, it's not your fault. It was external circumstances of things, governments and things done to you, and you kind of blame yourself. Don't ever feel guilty, because like even walking, we fall, we get up, we brush ourselves off. You're an entrepreneur, you fall, people laugh at you, think, oh, I'm a failure. You're not. It's just we've learned the lesson. I've had ones that didn't work. It's okay. Just brush yourself off and start again. It's okay. Don't be beating yourself up.
Well, Roy, it's been a really powerful conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you. Your story is a reminder for all of us that, success is never a straight line. Business is never a straight line. If it was that, it'd be so easy for everyone else like that. And, it's been interesting to hear about your personal growth and everything. So thanks for sharing your journey and your lessons and your honesty with us. And remember, everybody, you're not finished yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks so much for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Please see the links to all our socials. Until next time, remember, you're not finished yet.